Today I'm diving into the new DS13 TMR joysticks from Ginfull. I grabbed two different batches to compare, links in the description below. This first one doesn't mention DS13 or Max anywhere in the listings, but the photos look spot on compared to what I'd seen for the DS13. I was hoping that these were not the Max version, as I had the impression that the non-Max version had a lighter tension. But that may not be a correct impression, as I'm starting to doubt there is a non-Max version. These were about $16 for 6 pieces, so a little over $2.50 each, and all 6 arrived in good shape. This batch is listed as DS13, and Max is in the lead ad title, so I would expect these to be the DS13 Max Ginfull joysticks. These ran about $22 for 10 pieces, so a little cheaper per piece than the package of 6, as would be expected, and the joysticks from both batches look identical, at least from the outside. The tension feels about the same for both batches, and what feels to be pretty close to the Alps, probably a little softer, so I suspect both batches are the DS13 Max joysticks. Looks like an angular TMR sensor, laid out just like the JS13 Pro. I guess all the TMR joysticks will be moving to this design. Poles seem to be on the end of the magnet like I would expect. The TMR sensor IC looks like it has a coating on it. Let me take a closer look at it. Some kind of black sealant on the circuit board. I would guess manufactured the 33rd week of 2025. Top numbers are a bit hard to read, but looks like 13HL-301, then a space, and L3A. I did pull a board out of the batch of 6, and it had a date code of 2528. So joysticks in the 6-piece package were maybe manufactured a bit before this one. Yes, the black sealant is around the sensor IC. Very hard to see, but top line on the chip looks like 36Y, and the bottom line is AK. There are pads for a bypass capacitor, but no capacitor is installed. Heat doesn't seem to affect the sealant, so let me scrape as much as I can off and see if I can get this chip off in one piece. I'll put some flux on it, see if it can work its way under the chip. There we go. That took some heat. Those sealants always cause problems. That pinout matches the TMR 3636. Markings match the markings on the TMR 3636 datasheet as well. So this is a bit different IC than the IC in the JS13 Pro. Doesn't mean MDT doesn't make the IC in the JS13 Pro. Pretty good odds this is a TMR 3636, as that is not that common of a footprint. Let me see what the inside looks like. From what I can see from the outside, they look like the same Ginfull joystick mechanism. Of course, the big difference in the mechanism is the magnet holder is now molded as part of the shaft assemblies. Definitely, the poles of the magnet are on the small ends, and the magnet seems to be pretty well fixed into the holder. Switch may feel a bit different. I'm going to pause here just a second. Right after this, I pulled out some of the older Ginfull joysticks, and it turns out this switch does feel a bit different than the previous TMR joystick from Ginfull. Actually, this switch matches the feel of the switches in the older Hall Effect Ginfull joysticks. I would say this switch feels a little softer and sounds a little quieter than the previous TMR Ginfull joysticks. Back to the teardown. Let me get the plunger and spring out. Okay, so basically the same Ginfull design, which is very close to the Favor Union build. The only difference I see is how the magnet is held. I'll run my regular electromagnet test. The yellow trace is the current through the electromagnet, and the green trace is the output from the TMR sensor. This trace would represent the joystick moving from the up position to the down position. It takes about 3.5 milliseconds for the magnetic field to change, and the output from the TMR sensor is right there with it. So this sensor, like all the other TMR sensor, is faster than I can measure. Here is the same signal at 10 microseconds of division. Right at the center is where the magnetic field should start to change. and it looks to me maybe 3 or 4 microseconds, and then the output starts to change. Delay here is certainly under 20 microseconds, so faster than could be noticed, again like all the other TMR sensors. And this waveform represents the joystick moving from down to up, so the output from the sensor has the same speed no matter the direction. Response is very fast, like every TMR sensor I've tested. Since these are a TMR IC I haven't seen before, let me see what kind of power they pull. This is basically identical to the current pulled by the TMR IC in the JS13 Pro sticks. I'm at 1.8 volts and current is between 210 and 230 microamps. So very low power consumption, like all the other TMR sensors I've looked at. I'm going to put a set of these in a DualSense controller with a BDM-020 mainboard, and this will be what I use for testing the joysticks. After calibration, here's what I have. Both look pretty good. Left one is a bit more unbalanced than the right stick, but still pretty good. They are both right in the error range I like, so it must not be just me. It seems the new joysticks are targeting this error value. Now the springless center area test. I'll start with the left stick axis 0, the left-right axis. Minimum seems to be a 0 count, and maximum won't quite stay on +3, but I will call it a 3 count center area for this axis. Now axis 1, the up and down axis. Minimum is a -1 count and maximum is a +4 count, so a center area of 5 counts. Now the right stick, and I'll start with axis 2, the left-right axis. For a minimum value, it's very close to a 0 count. And a maximum reading of 2 counts, so a 2 count center area. Now axis 3, the up-down axis. Minimum value of 0. Maximum value of 3, so a 3 count center area. I would say overall a pretty standard set of readings. If anyone has a good idea for a name for this springless center area test, please leave a comment. Now to see if these will fit in an edge stick module, the sensor housing looks a bit square on the corners, so I will see. It's close, but it's not going to fit as is. The corners of the sensor housing, opposite the switch, are bumping into the plastic. Of course, they can be made to fit quite easily. Just need to trim the corners off the sensor housing opposite the switch. Have to make sure the melted plastic doesn't clog up the alignment holes. And avoid hitting any of the small SMD parts on the circuit board. A little baffling, Ginfull didn't mold this to fit an edge stick module. For sure, a missed opportunity there on Ginfull's part. Anyone's thoughts on a Max Plus version dropping soon? Here's how it looks in an edge stick module. The DS13 is on the left and a Sony unmodified stick module is on the right. Right there in the 6 to 8% error range with a decently balanced circle. Here's a new test I'm going to start for the edge stick modules, the module swap. A few comments have talked about the stick's center position moving when the stick's module position is changed, which wouldn't be that surprising as there are some magnets in the controller itself. So this test is really aimed at seeing how sensitive the TMR sensor is to the external magnetic fields coming from the controller. The DS13 joystick was calibrated in the left stick position, and it looks like the worst axis is like 4 counts off. I'll swap modules and that will put the DS13 in the right stick position. Looks like worst axis is 4 counts off and it's the same axis and direction, so really not much difference. So once this is calibrated, it should work in any position or any edge controller without having to recalibrate. So other than having to trim one of the sensor housing, these will work fine in an edge controller. I've been gaming with these for a few days now, and they are genuinely solid. But first, if you have enjoyed this video, please subscribe. It would really help me out. Feel-wise, these don't quite match the smoothness of the K-Silver JS13 Pro sticks, but they do feel smoother than the previous Ginfull joysticks. So I'm back to wondering if the center-mounted magnet and angular sensor are having some effect on the smoothness feeling. Tension-wise, these feel very close to the JS13 Pro. I don't have a good way to measure the tension yet, but I did try, and these DS13s ended up about 5 grams lighter than the Alps, and about 5 grams heavier than the JS13 Pro. But these are of the Favor Union design, and it does have a very slight different feel than the Alps design. This is where I'm so glad I ordered a new edge stick module to keep in its OEM condition. While the measurements I did put these between the Alps and the JS13 Pro, when comparing the feel in the same controller, these feel much closer to the JS13 Pro than to the Alps. So if you're looking for that high tension feel, these will disappoint, but they do have a little more tension than the JS13 Pro sticks. Of course, if you're replacing the joysticks in an edge stick module, I would just use something else that fits without trimming the sensor housing. Not that it's difficult or anything, but why go through the extra effort when you don't have to? Overall, I would say these are very close to the JS13 Pro. If you prefer the feel of the Ginfull joysticks, then these will be a great upgrade for any of their Hall or the previous TMR joysticks. The DS13 Max didn't dethrone my favorite, but they did sneak up very close. A good joystick, and I don't think anyone would be disappointed after installing these. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.